there was an interesting story that came out recently. There is a guy named Chet Haze. Are you familiar with this whole story? Chet Haze is actually, that's his rap name, but he's actually the son of Tom Hanks.
All right. Yeah.
Okay, you know about all this.
I heard about it. I don't know the story though.
Okay,
but I
so
heard
the story
right?
is well, Tom Hanks, according to the internet, and I don't know how accurate this is, but according to reports on the internet, Tom Hanks is worth about $350 million, right? Which sounds about right for someone in the stature of a Tom Hanks.
Right. I mean, I don't ever want to look into somebody else's pocket, but you know.
But this man is clearly worth hundreds of millions of dollars.
I do salute, homie.
So Chet Haze is an aspiring rapper, and he's used the N-word in some of his raps. And he actually went on Instagram and defended his use of the N-word.
I think what's funny is this. We had this conversation before. You can say anything you want. Just be prepared to defend it, man. That's the sad truth. Look, freedom of speech isn't free, you know. And I'm not sitting here saying, "Oh, I can only imagine the YouTube comment. Well, Technique is saying that someone's gonna beat this guy up." No one's saying that. I think that when you talk about people who are in a position like that where they don't need to rap, you know what I mean? Like, my man doesn't need to rap, right? You're worth so much money that you probably never need to rap at all. It was funny. I was with Chino Excel. We drove down to Long Beach the other day for like a little festival, and we were talking and we were laughing because we were saying the people that are in the position where I'm in, which is like in the top tier underground that can do shows that have about 1,000 to 2,000 capacity. They're always trying to get to that next level where they're the amphitheater guys who could do 3,000 to 5,000. The amphitheater guys want to be the stadium guys, right? The stadium guys doing like 100,000 a night. They finally get tired of this shit. They say, "Man, I want to be an actor or something like that where I don't got to do all this shit." The actor says, "Well, I'm getting screwed over. I'm not getting the $100 million. I'm getting $20 million." He wants to be what? The producer or that the producers and all the directors are saying, who's getting all the money? The lawyers. But the lawyer's son, what does he want to be? He wants to be the rapper.
Right. It's all full circle.
He wants to be the rapper that's the way underground rapper that nobody knows about, that comes out of nowhere. It's a cycle, man. It's just insane.
Look, I know the majority of y'all are not going to get this because the history is still so fresh in our country. But hip-hop isn't about race. It's about the culture you identify with. And can't no one tell me what I can't say. I just want to clarify one thing. Under no circumstances would I ever go up to somebody that I didn't know and just be like, "Hey, what's up, my nigga?" It's an unspoken thing between people who are friends who understand each other.
That sounds good from the sanctity of your $100 million home. That plays out a lot different in the street. That's just the God's honest truth. You know, in a petri dish, you can be the bravest man in the world. When you step out of there, you know, who's to say? I don't know. I hope someone doesn't do something negative to him over that. I hope that he just realizes that in a lot of these positions, you know, when I talk about my use of the word, I always tell people that my mother hated that. You know, my parents never liked that. It was just that I grew up in Harlem, right? So I would go to the basketball court, right? And I think I've told this story before when I was a little kid and people would be picking teams. And the first time I ever got called that, they were picking teams and they were like, "I got this nigga, I got that nigga." And they pointed to me and they said, "I got that little Puerto Rican nigga right there." And I'm like, whoa, when did I become a nigga and when did I become Puerto Rican, man? I'm Peruvian and I'm part black. Like, what the fuck is that? I told my mother and she flipped out. She was like, "Who called you a nigga?" Oh, fuck them. I was like, "Mom, it was some black kids in the park and then the Puerto Rican can." And she explained to me then that, like, "Listen, Felipe, that's not a word that you should really be using. I know that people use it sometimes to express camaraderie with one another, but, you know, as a man," she said, "you should probably find better ways of expressing yourself." And, you know, as a kid, that's how I heard it. You know, as an adult, I think that she was probably right. But at the same time, you know, in terms of hip hop was definitely something that came from an African American experience, black struggle. It has its roots in the Caribbean, you know, Kool Herc.
Yeah.
I think that when you talk about it not having race or religion, I think that much is true. But at the same time, you can't love hip hop without loving the people that created it. You know what I mean? It's almost insane for you to not have, love for the people. And I don't think that I got a sense from that video that he has anything against black people at all. Mm. I feel, and if anything, that from what I got from that video, that he just wishes he had more culture to him and he grew up around people that were different than him. I can't ever tell someone what to say or what not to say. You know what I mean? But at the same time, somebody that communicates with me and talks to me like that, that's definitely something I have control of. Sure, I can't tell you what to say to you and yourself, but I can regulate how you speak to me. So if you talk to me like that and I have a problem with it and I tell you that I'm not going to tolerate that, then I can at least appreciate the thing I can at least appreciate about his statement, if I don't agree with what he said, is the fact that he said that he would never address somebody that he don't know like that. That at least I can respect. I don't necessarily agree with his interpretation of that for historical reasons and various others. But again, what does that matter? What does that affect anything? I've never heard the song. I'm never going to hear the song. You know what I mean?
Well, I did notice.
I will not hear it in a tree. I will not hear it in a van. I will not hear it while I'm free. I will not hear it in the can. Nah,
when I was playing the video
I'm
for
a
you,
poet, not even know it.
When I was playing the video for you just now, I did see your face change when he did use the N-word.
Yeah, I mean, it just
you had an emotional response.
It rolled off his tongue, like you used to yell at it. It looked like an extra in Django. I mean, what do you want me to say? It's just ridiculous. But you know what's funny is that I've known white people that I grew up with in the hood that I've definitely heard use that word before. But it was because they came from that life. They came from that experience.
Well,
but what I mean by an experience is that they identified more with the black people who accepted them than they did with white people who said, oh, that's not who you are. You just want to be black. And they were like, no, I love hip hop music. And then again, I know white people that love hip hop music and that love black culture, but would never say the N-word because they know the history and the ramifications of that, and they think that it's ignorant to use.
Right.
You know what I mean? Let me ask you for a second.
Yeah.
You not to put it out there, but you potentially one day could have biracial children. How would you ever use the word?
I don't use the word without having children.
Right.
So I don't think having children would suddenly
green
light me using the word.
No, but I'm just saying.
We've hung out before, off camera. Have I ever used the word around you?
But then how would you feel if your son started using the word? Would you say, hey, wait a minute, I know that you're half black and you're technically, who's going to argue with you about using the word, but do you think your status as a parent would say, hey, wait a minute, I don't want you to use that type of language in this house. This is not the way I want you to communicate as someone who's black and Russian.
Right. Well, if I had biracial children and the mother was black, I would let the mother have that conversation with them, because I don't think I would have the authority to explain to them why they should or should not use the word, because I don't use the word myself.
So you think his logic is bullshit, in other words?
He feels like it's okay for him to say it, and he's putting it out there. He's standing behind what he's saying, and I feel it's an interesting conversation that is not going to have one answer, or not going to have a perfect answer either way. Because, for example, I interviewed V Nasty. Remember who she was with the white girl?
Yeah, we had this conversation. Yeah, I talked about that.
All they say is she shouldn't be saying the N-word. She white. She ain't from the hood. She ain't raised like this. This is a culture. This is voodoo. This. Like, come on, but y'all don't know me. Like, this is where I was raised. This is how I was raised. It's not. I didn't even know it was a problem somewhere else.
Well, the one thing I realized after sitting down with V Nasty, because we did a lot of coverage about that. A lot of people had a lot of things to say. But when I sat down with her and started just really getting to know her off camera as well as on camera, what I started to realize was that this girl had never been outside of Oakland until she was like in her 20s.
Right.
Like literally had not been outside of a city and probably a certain section of a city. And this was not an act that she was putting on. That she culturally identified more with black people than she did with white people. Not to be cool, it's just this is just what happened in the course of her growing up. When you look at, Chet being the son of someone worth, someone as rich as Tom Hanks.
His wealth has nothing to do with that, to be honest.
Well,
why?
You
would be a
think
billionaire black dude. What? Same. To me, my thing is this.
Well, no.
We talked about.
Well, let me just say this. That word is a lot more prevalent in black communities as well as poor black communities. Would you say that?
Don't you think white people use it plenty of times, dude?
But not in you mean a positive way or a negative way?
A negative way, a positive way. We're talking about the usage of the word in general, right? You're saying that in the black community, people use that word to mean something more positive.
Right.
I don't know if that's necessarily true, because sometimes when people use it, they're not always, oh, my nigga. They're saying, fuck this nigga. Or in that term,
okay,
it's not.
Fair enough.
Or this is a bitch ass nigga. Or those niggas. You know what I mean? That even the connotation of that word is something negative. When I look at it, you know what I mean? It's something where I might be a nigga, but I'm a rich nigga. You know what I mean? These things that people come up with to say, do you realize what you're saying about yourself, though? I think what we need to do, and what I hope that Mr. Haze,
saying I'm not really a human, but I'm a rich human.
Right, it's just nonsense.
It's kind of like you're
right.
Yeah.
Look, I hope that Mr. Haze or Mr. Hanks or whoever he is does a little bit of research, and if he wants to, if he wants to play that philosophical role, then find out. I'll say the same thing to him that I said to V Nasty. Find out which one of us is not a nigga. And I said this on your program. Don't just look at our society and say, all right, well, black history started with Martin Luther King. No, dude. Find out which one of us was not a nigga. You know what I mean? Learn about our culture and our society if you really want to be a part of this culture, about hip hop. Maybe educate yourself about African history, black history, about the reality of what people had to suffer, about what existed before people were put into chains, before people were put into slavery. Learn something about us, because you can't just be along for the ride when you think it's cool to use that word and then understand it. Also, where are you on all of these other issues? You know what I mean? Everybody want to be a nigga until it's really time to be a nigga. It's just like that old saying, everybody want to be black, but nobody want to be black. You know what I mean? That old Paul Mooney thing, where in reality, if you're going to be this person until the point where there's some kind of drama and trouble, and then you step out the room and all of a sudden, oh, I'm not the homie no more, then we know that's a fraud.
Yeah.
But if you really want to be that person, then commit to it by helping the black community by doing this, and then maybe you'll come to the realization that you're not a nigga and that we're not either. That's just something we've been used to calling ourselves because we wanted to come up with some better idea and reclaim the things that we lost about our society. And that's a tough process. You know what I mean?
Talk about the breeding plantations.
Well, those are the plantations that we've never seen in the movies. The only time that I think we ever saw it was in a film called Goodbye Uncle Tom. I don't know if you ever seen that movie.
Well, Django kind of mentioned it.
Django mentioned it,
yeah.
But in Goodbye Uncle Tom, which is, I believe, an Italian film, but it was a very, very powerful depiction of what slavery was like. And they literally showed these breeding places where it was like 10 or 5 to 10 quote unquote bucks is what they called them, right? And they would have these young girls, which were from ages 10 to 20, forcibly mate with these men that they kept in cages like animals, which is what they regarded them as when you look at the sickness of that so-called civilized society, that shining beacon of democracy that this country is supposed to represent. And when you look at it, you can see that people wanted to engineer a bigger human being, a stronger human being,
Right.
to do the work that they wanted to do. And I think that it's sad because when you analyze the language that's used, the first person to call the black woman a bitch is not black man, it's the white slave master, because when she had children, they were never called children. They were called pups.
Wow.
They said that she had had a litter of pups if she had had more than one. So this dehumanization, this ultimate disgrace to the mother of humanity is what was going on in places like this. And when I think about that, and I think about the horrific, ugly side that they're refusing to show you. Why? Because people want to whitewash that history. They want to make it seem, these Tea Party nuts are even trying to rewrite it to make it seem like, you know, slavery wasn't so bad. It wasn't until the liberals came in and rebel-roused the black people that, you know, everything went awry. No, dick. You were just a racist asshole for so long that you didn't even understand how racist you were.
I think it was after watching 12 Years a Slave. It never really dawned on me that slaves were extremely expensive to the point of you having to have a mortgage on one. Mm-hmm. So I would guess, just based on that word, that in today's numbers, you know, today's currency, a slave was maybe $150,000 or so.
I don't know the exact change,
but you would.
But it wasn't.
You don't have a mortgage on a car. You have, you know what I'm saying. You have a mortgage on a house.
It wasn't. Some people have car payments.
Yeah, but it's not called a mortgage. When you use the word mortgage, it usually signifies a bigger amount.
Right,
I'm saying like,
depends.
I never realized how big of a business this was, because you know the whole premise of 12 Years a Slave was that people were grabbing black people from the North and selling them as slaves in the South and making a killing off of it. It was a big business.
I mean, that's where the saying "sold down the river" comes from.
Yeah.
Literally. So I mean, what's sad is that, you know, it reminds me of something that people told me about the music industry. They said that in like the 30s and 40s, a lot of black artists used to get ripped off because people would say, oh, come do this tour and we'll pay you in advance for like 3 or 4 shows. Yeah. And then when they did 10 shows, when the 10th show was done, they were like, hey, fuck you, whatever. And what could a black artist do in 1940? There was no civil rights bill, right?
Yeah. Well,
there was no march on Washington.
The Chitlin Circuit is...
Right. So that's what they were...
What this was, yeah.
So that's what they were kind of locked into. So when I look at that sort of thing, I often think to myself that it's interesting that in that case, here is the same premise where they were offering him to play as a musician for all of these shows. Yeah. And he thought, man, I'm about to get paid. And then they were the ones that actually sold him into slavery. And the ill thing about the movie with it was that it was such a common practice at the time for it to happen to people. Yeah. And that, to me, really exemplifies the barbarity of humanity that we haven't really escaped. You know what I mean? Putting a rover on Mars, right? Lasers, flat screens. That's not evolution of our society. You know, evolution of our society would be to exterminate racism, right? To stop pharmaceutical companies from hoarding information that prevents people from finding the cure to a disease just because treating it little by little with increments is more financially viable. That's a disgrace to humanity. You're trading in your entire human race for a few points on a profit margin. It's disgusting. You know what I mean? And at that point, what can you say to somebody?
That's what I mean. We were dealing with those issues that's happening right now in 2015 and 1990.
Were you with him when that happened?
We was living together.
You were living together.
He had gone to the bank, came home all scarred up, mad. I took the pictures.
And when Meek said it, he's not turning his back on the hood. I guess what he's saying is, you doing all this, man. Like, you doing this to blow the fuck up and to move on and bring your dudes out of it with you.